Hi, my name is Amit. I've been with Moolya for about 4 years now. In this time span, I have had the opportunity to work in testing, sales, marketing, some part of operations and HR as well. So it has been, a lot of opportunities at one place for me. Personally, I come from Rajasthan and I've completed my B.Tech in 2015. And that's how I started finding out about other testing companies in the country. I remember doing one interview in somewhere in Delhi, and that is where I came to know about this walk-in happening in Moolya in Bangalore. And so my hometown is in Jaipur. So from Delhi, I went to Jaipur, I took a flight, came to Bangalore, and then the next day I came here for an interview. So that's how my journey with Moolya started. So Moolya till that point was not a very big company. We had about, I think, 70, 80 people before the drive happened. That was the first major drive in the history of Moolya as well. And we had about 1400 to 1500 people coming in at the same time. Nobody had expected that big a response, and that is why the entire road, everything was blocked, the entire building was blocked, and everybody in Moolya at that point of time were only all were concentrating on the drive itself. There were some people in the office who were going to work on that day. It was a Saturday, but they didn't work at all. They couldn't work at all. Nobody expected that big a number of people. I think they expected somewhere between 100 to 200 people, but about 1400, 1500 people showed up. So it was really nice. The entire experience, even though there were so many people, even though it was so unexpected, but what was good is everybody in the company came together and thought on the spot and did a quite a good job. So that was something really nice. I think it is towards the end of my B.Tech is when I realized there's a profession called testing as well, because in the Indian education system, at least for our university, so the entire university has about 70,000-80,000 students learning B.Tech in 1 year. And none of us knew that there exists a software testing as a profession as well. When we spoke about computers, we only knew about developers. We didn't even know about BAs, program managers, project managers. There was nothing like that. So I think till the last year, I was not aware about testing at all. It is only towards the last year when I started looking out. So I was also doing a startup sort of something. I had a startup of my own while I was completing third year. And I think that is the time when we started looking at all different things, because we wanted a website of our own as well. We thought we'll have an in-house team and everything. So that is when we started finding out, and we came to know that okay, there are developers, and there are BAs, and there are product managers, and there are testers as well. So that's where the understanding came in. And then while I was completing my final year, the startup had also gone bad. We didn't have any money. We were still in college, so there was we didn't have a lot of resources. We didn't have understanding. I don't think there was any other startup working in the space of e-commerce back in Rajasthan at that point. We had a lot of hopes with it, but then we thought it's probably not the right time for us to go in. So yeah, that stopped, and came to Bangalore, started looking. The next day I had an interview here, gave the interview with a couple friends at that point, who all gave the interview together. Somehow I got selected, and I was also preparing for some exams as well at that point. But then spoke to other people in the family outside and felt Moolya should be a good enough place to start with. Also, the reviews I read about Moolya online, Glassdoor or Facebook or other places, so the reviews were very positive. So that was like one big reason why I started with Moolya. So continuing from my previous answer where I spoke about how I came to know about testing. So even when I came to know about testing, I did not know exactly the sort of testing we do in Moolya, right? Moolya has since long been doing a different type of testing than other traditional companies who are still doing that, a different type of testing. So I think a lot of things have to fall in place for something like this to happen. There were a lot of testers in the industry who came together, like Pradeep and other ones, who came together in the later years of 2000, and then they started talking about how they can have an impact impact on a better type of testing in India. So that is the type of testing which I learned, which I've been practicing, which the environment that I've grown in. So that is why, in India, if you go about asking, hey, do you like testing or do you not like testing? Most of the testers will also say they don't like testing. So, but that's probably not true in case of Moolya, because we do a different sort of testing. We do it in a different way, and that requires a lot of thought process. That requires a lot of brainstorming. That requires a lot of understanding of the system. That requires a lot of other skills like thoughtfulness or questioning, all those things. So I think if you look testing from that idea, if you look testing from that perspective, it is very nice profession. So I've been enjoying it, very nicely. Yeah. I think the major challenge that testing industry is facing is because we are in a space where most of our CXOs are either ex-developers or businessmen. Because most of those guys have not done the sort of testing they should have done. That is why even right now, the sort of understanding they have about testing is the same sort of understanding that they had 20 years, 30 years down the line. If you see development has evolved technology wise, methodology wise, different ways. But if you look at testing as it was done in 1960s, 70s, 80s, obviously they did not even have a different testing departments in most companies at those times. But even when testing became a separate department in most companies in 80s, 90s, it has stayed the same way. It has been like some people write requirements, the other people convert those requirements into test cases. Then there are other set of people who run those test cases on their machines, put right, pass, fails, get numbers out of it. Say 70% is fail, 30% is pass, all those things. So that is, I think, major challenge in the industry is with the understanding of CXOs. Once that understanding evolves, like for example, the company that we are working with right now, it's a US based company. They also have a headquarter in London, and that company does not have SDETs in their company. The reason they don't have SDETs in their company is because they have evolved through a lot of different processes. And they know what happened when their testers wrote code, how their thought process was restricted because of them writing code. So there are a lot of other things as well, because the test leadership in that company comes from the space of context driven testing as well, again similar to how Moolya is. And that is why they have done multiple iterations of different techniques they have put in, different processes they have put in into testing, and that is why they have reached to a level where they can say, okay, this is a good sort of testing. And this is very similar to how Moolya also does. The reason they have been able to go there is because they were ready to experiment with it, and the core idea with them was they knew that testing is important. They knew that testing is important for the delivery, for the quality of the product, for the value in the product. So that was the core that they had, and around that core they started experimenting it. But in India, and not just in India, in a lot of other places as well, testing is not as important. Development is important. If you have good developers, the understanding is if you have good developers, you will have a good product, which is not exactly true. Yeah. Every industry has, so for example, let's say politicians, right? In every political party, there are a few prominent people, then there are second level, then there are third level, and then there are Janta, the soldiers on ground. So, but the prominent people are the guys who create a methodology, or who create a thought process, and that thought process that goes down towards the entire tree, and everybody puts their energy into it. Similarly, if you see about startups, or if you look at MNCs also, so in each of these categories, there are some leaders, and then there are other guys who are following it. For example, in Indian startup space, there are Swiggy, there's Ola, or there's Zomato, other companies. But the way, the sort of work culture they will develop in the startup space is what other smaller startups will also try to do. And that's how the startups as a category gain the soul that they have. Similarly, in testing also, I believe there are set of people who are thought leaders. there are a set of companies that are thought leaders. These companies, these leaders, these people need to keep on going out, talking about testing, evangelizing the thought process that should be there in testing. See, other spaces have developed a lot. Testing has not developed a lot. So there's a lot of scope for us to, talk about. So I think it is the responsibility of these sort of leaders. I think it is also responsibility of Moolya as well to speak a lot about testing, speak a lot about evangelizing testing. And that is how probably, we'll be able to have an impact over other larger companies, other bigger companies. And once we start doing that, once people around us start seeing value in what we are doing, is probably then they will also start doing it. And that is, I think, the thought leadership or leadership in testing from. One challenge that I'm facing at my job in testing is, I think, people. So when I say people, I try to cover a lot of area where, see, Moolya is a software testing services company, which means we provide software testing services to other companies, other customers. Our customers come from different places. They are startups, or they are MNCs, they are enterprises, they are government agencies, different ones. The biggest since Moolya does a different sort of testing, and then there are other companies, other service companies who do a different, the traditional type of testing. What happens is Moolya at a lot of times works along with those companies. And in those times, the challenges that the testers who are working on the same product but from different companies, they do not understand this, sort of things that we want to do, the sort of processes that we want to implement. Let's say we talk about test charters, we talk about test sessions, we talk about brainstormings or pair sessions. So all those are a couple of things which testers from other companies have not done, they have not been told, so they don't understand about it. And I think also, let's say we find something which is not exactly in the requirement. Testers from other companies would be like, so this is not a requirement, but people in our company would be like, so it makes sense to be in the product, whether it's a part of requirement or not. So those are small things, which leads to clashes. Adding to it is the presence of bigger stakeholders in the team. For example, let's say it's the PA or the product manager or the other developers because they have not worked with a company like Moolya, because they have not thought of testing like the way we do, because they have not been in that environment, because they have not been in that ecosystem where we are. There's a difference in their thought process, and then there's a difference in our thought process, which a lot of time leads to difficult discussions. Creating awareness about it, educating them. See, there are two types of products. One is a consumer product like Swiggy, which every person uses, so there's no need of educating about it. Any person, from a peon to a CEO to a car driver, everybody can use it without any form of educating. But let's say there's a different application for clinical trials. So where in a clinical trial, you have a dedicated set of team. They have dedicated, a particular background in education, background in a domain. So those guys have to be educated in a certain way. So that is why I think since about testing, there has not been so much awareness. It is our responsibility to create that education, to create that awareness, and then it's one step at a time, but it's a long journey. So that's how it can be solved. For me specifically, I've completed 4 years now. A lot of my friends are in their second or third company, but it has been very difficult for me to change companies from Moolya. There are not many companies who can provide the sort of environment that Moolya can. Moolya puts in a lot of effort in creating a people company. I remember once I asked Pradeep if Moolya is a people company. Pradeep's response was, Moolya is not just a people company, Moolya is people. So that is the sort of effort we want to make into making this environment a very comfortable environment for everybody. So Moolya has a soul, and I think all companies have a soul, and those souls are built because of different decisions made by different people. People who are at higher hierarchies have a bigger impact on that soul, while the ones who are newcomers have smaller ones, but even they have an impact on how the soul of the company. So I think Moolya has done a great job in making sure that the soul of Moolya is a happy soul. It's an enthusiastic, energetic soul. We are always looking for people who are genuine at heart, who can speak out their mind, who know how to speak up, who know when to say no, who know when to say yes, who knows, when to call bullshit. So I think that's the sort of soul Moolya has built, and that is very important in the space of testing as well. If your people are not strong enough to say this is right or this is wrong, then they don't deserve to be a tester also. My specific journey wise, I have had tons of opportunities in Moolya. I was never bound to just one domain, one role. I started as a software tester for one of our projects with airlines. I think about 1.5 years down the line, I was also given a chance to do sales for Moolya. So did marketing, sales. We also had a product for startups because startups don't have a lot of resources but testing is still important for them as well. So we had a tool called Startup Test Lab. So did sales for that. Then also did sales for Moolya services as well. And then we had this amazing opportunity with one of our US-based customers. So we needed some good people who could lead the teams here. So Pradeep asked if I would want to start that. So I did that. Now I'm in talks with him to have another good role. So let's see how that rolls out. But yeah, so even after completing 4 years, I'm still getting newer roles to go in. So that's that's Moolya for me. So motivation wise, obviously, since when I was small, and whenever little times we had to go to a government office to either pay the bills of electricity or water, because those times there were no online bill payment facilities. So I would see that people were not very enthusiastic to respond. The people who were working in those government offices, they were just like, they have to get this done, they have to leave at 5, they have to go for lunch at 1. So typical Indian government office thing. But I always felt, see, it was not their fault. They had to wake up every day, do the same thing, come to office, do the same thing, meet with the same sort of people, discuss the same problems, find the same solutions. So there were no solutions also. They had to just go through a guideline. So and that was very boring for them. And that is why after completing a year, 2 year, 3 year, they were at a stage where they did not give, they did not give a damn about what was happening. Even if somebody is happy, it's okay. If nobody is happy, that's also okay for them. And the same thing happens with us also. The same thing happens with every person who is in the IT space as well. The IT space guys are no better than daily laborers. We come in traffic, we drink the pollution, we do the same thing. And it's just that we sit in fancy offices. But if you look at Moolya, the sort of environment that is created here, it motivates you itself. Everybody is given the amount of, the space to take their own calls, to make their own decisions. It's an open place. Everything is heard. You want to speak about something, you will be heard. If you make a mistake, that's okay, because at least you are doing something. If you were not doing something, you would never fail. You would never make a wrong decision. So yeah, we are happy that people make decisions. We are happy that people are speaking up. Even if they make mistakes, that's completely okay for us. We don't mind. So I think those are the sort of small things which a company does, and that motivates us itself. And in testing, one good part is that there are no set lines which you can always follow. You will have to always go beyond the lines. You'll have to always go through the boundaries, explore those areas, come back, and then write down what exploration you did. So all those small things are something which never let you get bored. Motivating others, I think the environment itself, as I said, motivates all of us in a similar way. So one piece of advice for anybody getting into testing space is, you will be given template in your testing profession. No matter whether you are in Moolya, whether you are in Infosys, whether you are anywhere else in a startup, you will be given a template to follow, but it is upon you the amount of following you want to do or the amount of redoing you want to do. So my advice to everybody, every new person would be, do more of redoing than just going through the template. Never have templates in life. Obviously, templates help you; they create a guiding line. But once you are on the path, you have to do what makes best sense for you. So not everybody can fit into the same role. So one thing that is happening in the industry and that does not make a lot of sense to me is, everybody is looking for automation testers. Everybody is looking for people who can write code to automate some stuff. Now, the problem it leads to is, all the testers or most testers in the space wants to learn code so that they can automate. The objectives have changed. The objective to learn code is to develop utilities, to develop programs that could help you or that could help your users. But the objective of all or most testers in the space is today to learn code to that level which could be used for them to automate stuff, whether on mobile or websites or all those things. And the problem it leads to is that as far as the interviews are concerned, people do that, get through the interviews, but the companies don't have a lot of work for them on the automation front. So companies use them again for functional. The problem it leads to is that now the tester has learned to code, he starts looking at things in the way a code would flow. And that is why every time he's given a functionality, instead of thinking about how a user would be using it, he starts thinking about how the developer has developed it. And that is where it leads to a problem, because the developer has already thought about how he would think and how he would code. Now, no matter whether the tester thinks like, so it's a good thing. You can think about how the developer would have thought and coded, and you can find out the problems in the code. But then who will be the person who will think for the customer? Who will think for the user? That's actually one of the main roles a tester has. So there's this friction between what the industry needs, but what it interviews for, and then what it finally uses people for, and that actually leads to a problem. While on the other side, Moolya, we do interviews for all sort of testers. We do it for functionality, we do it for performance, we do it for automation. And I think in most of our automation interviews, we looking for people who can write code, who understand code. So if you understand code, if you can write code, we use you for automation related projects only. But even if you understand code, but if you are still thinking about like a user, if you can still think about how a program manager would or product manager would, if you're still thinking from those fronts, then we use you for functional ones. And if there's somebody who can do both, that is amazing. That person can be used to create utilities that could be directly used by testers, and which we are also doing from Bagasura as well, where we have developed something which is directly used by testers to test applications. So that is, I think, one challenge or one gap in the industry, but nobody is looking at it. CXOs don't want people who cannot code. And if you won't hire people who can't code, there will be no people who can't code. And when there will be no people who can't code, they will never be able to think like users. Not never, but most of them will not be thinking like users. They will be thinking like developers, but you already have developers. Then why do you need people who can think like developers? So that's the gap there. But I think in due time that should get resolved.